Hi guys, I really want to start this video by saying that this is probably one of the most daunting things that I've ever tried to film, as well as probably one of the most important. I am really feeling the weight of not wanting to mess this information up or tell it in the wrong way or to oversimplify things. At the same time, I feel like for me, this is an important thing to go through and to process because it's kind of how I work. I have a lot of information going on right now, and it helps me to kind of package it and make it make sense, and at the same time to be able to share it with others. And I think our stories help other people. One of the best things that I ever heard was that I am here to tell my story, not prove my story. And that is what I'm going to try to do within this video. I want to make sure that I'm just simply trying to tell it. So I would start by saying that my past is definitively riddled with social struggles. Especially as a kid growing up, I did have a good friend, but overall I was made fun of, I was bullied, and I didn't really get the social world at all. I was good at academics. I tended to kind of be the teacher's pet and did all my work and got good grades, but at the same time, like, I didn't get the social world. Kids were mean and I didn't understand it. When it came to making new friends and trying to get into the social world, I was always kind of around the perimeter of it. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it because I tried to figure out how to be like other people and how to belong, and it was always kind of an intellectual process. There was nothing natural to it. I couldn't understand the dynamics. And as I got older, I got married, and I married somebody who was really laid back and not really overly involved in a social world himself. And so it kind of became easy to just fall into things until those times where I started wanting to get involved in things, or I found something that I really liked to do, and the social aspect came up again, especially in churches and things like that, and it would be the same struggles all over again. Not necessarily as harsh as elementary school, but definitely this kind of me on the perimeter, not really figuring out, and I tended to kind of do the things. So if I look back and I say the churches I was involved in, I was usually working, I was serving, I was stacking chairs, and I was making coffee, and I was doing the things around the perimeter, and to one degree or another wasn't overly involved in the community outside of the function. When I think not about what necessarily other people experienced about me, but my process of that, I can look back and say, oh, this makes sense, because there was a lot of intellectual struggle of thinking about how to do things. I can still remember teaching myself to make eye contact with people, to make sure that I am looking at a person when they're talking to me. And not that I never did that before, but it becoming a mental decision that I'm going to make sure I'm facing somebody and looking at them when they're talking to me. So going into, as I've shared many times, going into 2017, as we hit that summer point and I decided that I wanted things to be different. I wanted to grow and I wanted to change, and I wanted to challenge the parts of my life that I hadn't really challenged before. In that process, though, there started being challenges, because I wasn't just taking the easy road. Not surprisingly enough, it got hard, and I was challenging things that I would have just bailed on before and been like, I'm going after the parts that are making me scared and that are making me struggle. On top of that, I started having challenges within my career as far as different things, and because it's a public video, obviously I'm not going to share too much, but as a teacher, certain things that were happening within that environment that started making me have to think about how I was doing things and start challenging the way I taught and the way I worked within my room and things like that, and the things I was thinking about, and trying to engage, finding a better way to be a teacher. And so all this stuff's going on, and for a good period of time, I thought I was going to lose my mind. I can't overstate that. Like, I don't want to break down to tears in this video, but there were a lot of tears and a lot of sadness and a lot of heartache and a lot of hurt and a lot of confusion and just sincerely not understanding. And why I would ask a question and I would get a bad response, and dang it, I was mystified. I felt like I was doing the same thing as other people was doing, and I was getting a negative response, and I couldn't understand and I couldn't figure out, and I found myself realizing that more and more I was that person watching, listening, trying to understand, trying to watch what everybody else was doing and figuring it out, and working like it's a problem, like it's a math problem, watching what this person does, watching what that person does, and trying to mimic and emulate that in a way that I could learn. And fake it till you make it, because that's a big thing. It was even said to me. So that's what I was going to do. I was going to watch everybody else, and I was going to figure out how they were doing it, and I was going to emulate it. And I knew I could emulate, because that's kind of how I have been doing my whole life. I had always felt like a chameleon. In fact, there is a big chameleon tattoo on my shoulder. And the reason I had that chameleon tattoo was to remind me of who I am in my best of times and my worst of times, because I had very often felt like I didn't really have an identity. I had everybody else's identity. That became how I started to do things, but it broke down because I could do it for a time, but as soon as things started getting a little deeper, it started unraveling. And I don't know about everybody else's perception, but for me, I could tell like it was just surface. I wasn't able to do the deeper stuff. I was only able to walk the walk, not necessarily talk the talk kind of ordeal. And so fast forward to this moment in time where I'm laying in bed and I'm staring at a white wall. And one of the few times in my life that everything is just quiet. I was absolutely lost, and I didn't know what to do, because I had put everything I am into trying to understand and figure it out, and I felt like I had nothing really to show for it. And in those moments kind of came that peaceful, still voice of "Love liberates," which is a quote from Maya Angelou. And I said, okay, I know that love brings freedom. And I know that I believe that all things work together, and that there's a reason things happen. I had decided at some point to kind of adapt this mentality that if you will let it, the universe will work for you, not against you, that life is happening for you, not to you. And I decided to get up and move forward. And I saw a thing that got posted actually several times. I think it went around for a little while about you need to take time to heal and stop bleeding on the people around you. And it kind of stung at first when I heard that. But I had that whole shift of saying, all right, I'm struggling, I'm fighting, I'm kicking, I'm fighting against this whole thing. I need to take time and figure this out and not keep spilling all over everybody else. And so I took a deep breath, and I decided to relax. I decided to grab a hold of some of Brene Brown's words and try to just lean into the joy of the moment and the time, and really embrace gratitude for what I do have. I decided to just do the thing that's in front of me to do. I had a venue for writing that was kind of moved out of my life, and out of that thought, I had kind of the discipline of trying to come up with things, and I knew I had been complimented so much on my writing that I wanted to do something with that. So I started working on some things with writing, and I started taking a publishing course, and I just decided I need to kind of work that avenue. On top of that, I also had the career challenges going on, and so I decided, and rather than kind of skirt the edge of this, I'm going to start kind of chewing on this a little bit and working on managing this. So I started taking classes for that too, and I just started trying to just enjoy what I could, because I was really at that point struggling with a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety, and I just needed to do now. I tried to make my workout class, I tried to focus on it just becoming fun again and just dancing when I was there, not it taking on too much beyond today. I didn't know how to move forward, and I knew that I couldn't give up, because that was a promise I had made to myself, and I wasn't going to break that promise. And I knew I had to get through it, regardless of what else was happening. But the problem is I really kept having this thought that I don't fit, and I don't know how to fit. And I felt like that Michael W. Smith song of Place in This World from the 90s. It's a terrible song. But I kept feeling that I don't know how to belong. And it's not on anybody else. It's just this whole thing of, I don't understand. I feel like I'm from another planet. I feel like I don't understand how this process works. And I'm trying so hard to just find a place, and to not compromise being me, and not be that chameleon, but at the same time, like, I don't know how to fit. I'm on the edge. I don't know when to talk in a conversation. I don't know when to speak up. I don't know when to and when I do that, it seems to make people upset, and I felt bewildered, and it was taking a real toll on my heart. And so I had to evaluate kind of what I wanted to do. And as it would have it, because I was taking all these classes, I had a video drop into my lap, and I watched it, and it was about autism, specifically high-functioning autism, what is considered, it used to be considered Asperger's. At this point, it's considered autism spectrum disorder level 1, because we like more words, and it was specifically talking about presentation in females. And the autism is one of those words that I know lots of people have lots of connotations to, so I'm just going to say that whatever your perception of it is, I'm not going to explain it for the purpose of this video. I will link below the definition in the DSM-5, but I had always had more of the male view, and all of a sudden there was this information in my lap about what it looked like when it presented in the feminine. And then there was the moment where there was a chameleon on the screen. And it will probably be a moment I will never forget in my whole life, as he shared that more often than not, when it presents in females, they are the chameleon, and they are born as mimics, and they learn to adapt, and they learn to follow, and their social world is entirely different. So that is how they adapt. And the male side tends to be more socially isolated, but the female side tends to have those social engagements and trying to fit in and trying to, and like I said, I'm here to tell a story, not prove a story. So all I'm going to tell you is that as I watched that information, and then I began to read, and I did what I do, which is I read, and I read, and I listened, and I listened, and I read, and I dug, and I listened, and I listened, and the more information I found, the more overwhelmed I was with, how have I never seen this before? Because it painted a picture of me. And somebody said that the boys tend to be diagnosed because of the social issues and because of the behavioral issues. The girls tend to be diagnosed because of the strain that it takes on their mental health. And over my lifetime, the understanding of autism has grown, but there are lots and lots of women who are misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed, and this is a whole thing that we are starting to learn. And we are now starting to identify people when they're younger, but there are women that are in their 30s and 40s and older that are slowly starting to realize that this is not necessarily a mental health issue, and that what has happened is that they are spending this exhaustive amount of energy trying to be the amazingly brave creatures that they are to fit in, and not knowing that there's a difference. I don't know if I need a label, and I don't know if I need a name, because what I know is that this makes sense. Hindsight being 2020, I see myself across the years on the outside, trying to figure it out, trying to intellectualize it, trying to just mimic and be that chameleon, and not knowing how to do the things. So whether I have that label or not, or if I have that 40% out of the 80%, whatever the case may be, I definitively have those characteristics. And then if I go down the sensory issue, that's a whole other field. We could talk about that. I have some of that, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that can go with that. It's a lot of information to tell, but when I look at that DSM definition, and I look at research information, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that those characteristics so fit me, whether or not I get a label or not, it makes me take a deep breath and wish I'd known sooner. But also now moving forward, and where do I go from here? What do I say from here? It also makes me want to, in some way, I wish I could go back to everybody who had ever cared about me and explain myself. I can't do that, and it would be stupid to try. And also I think that, I believe that the right people stay in your life, and the people who love you, and it doesn't bring justification, it brings classification. I feel like it brings a title for what this really is. Because I have so beaten myself up over not being able to figure this out, knowing that I am an extremely kind and caring person and that I have a lot of good traits. So to not be able to figure out how to broach these social things and do those things, I don't know how, I'm stumbling over words, but to not be able to do those things is challenging and hard. And so to be able to understand that, number one, I'm not alone and that there are other people that have similar challenges, and it isn't just fear, because I have so fought and battled that I'm just scared thing. I'm just scared, and knowing I wasn't giving into that fear, and I wasn't giving up, and I wasn't just laying down in bed and saying, screw it, I'll play a video game and oh well. So to be able to know that there is actually sense to all of this, there's a relief to that. And I'm also grateful because I know, here's the thing, if somebody would have identified this to me when I was younger, there are things about my life that might have been easier and might have gone better, but I wouldn't have the heart that I have today, because I have been forced to fight. I can be proud of myself because I didn't lay down, because I'm at this point in my year and I'm still going and I'm still standing, and I'm not giving up. I get to see this picture of a world that's kind of all working together. Because if I hadn't had those challenges, if I hadn't had these things that came up, if I hadn't had to fight this fight, I may not have ever gotten to this. I may have never gotten to that self-understanding and that self-realization. So I'm forced into a position where I have to say, gosh, this stuff really sucks to have gone through. But it all worked together in one way or another. Bad stuff, good stuff, it's all kind of brought me to that day of listening to that information and cracking open the egg of saying, oh my gosh. And so then I have to believe that going forward, that's all part of it. That this is one step in a journey of whoever it is that I'm becoming and whatever it is I'm going to do with my life. And that compassion of knowing, I would compare it to seeing behind the curtain at the Emerald City. I got to go to the Emerald City and pull open the curtain and see that fabulous wizard that everybody's so intimidated by is simply a human. And that is life. That we're all human. And we haven't all got it figured out. And we all face challenges. And that whole thing of everybody's facing a battle. And we don't even always know our own battles. And for those of us who are just simply trying to do our best, wow, what a thing to realize you could be fighting something and have no idea what you're fighting, and have no idea that it's anything different than anybody else is fighting. I want to maintain gratitude and the belief that I am on a journey and I am in a process and it's going somewhere. And to simply trust that, and to trust God, and to know that this all is for a reason, and that life is bigger than I am. And on some level, I have to be proud of me. And I want you to be proud of you. Because if you're still fighting this fight, then you're doing good. And there may be things that you have no idea. You know, we don't have all the information that there is. And something could at any moment fall into your lap and make it all make sense to you. And so if you feel like you're missing pieces of the puzzle, I tell you what, I've spent a lot of this last year feeling like I was missing pieces to a puzzle. I still feel like I'm missing pieces to a puzzle. I just feel like I have a few more now. But if you feel like you're missing you might be missing pieces. Keep fighting. That's what you do. You do what with what you have now, and when you know better, you do better. So that's where I'm at moving forward. I really wanted to share this. I don't dare put a label on myself at this point when I don't really have that label, but I wanted to share my story and say this is where I'm at and this is what I'm going through. I thank you for anybody who took the time to listen to this, and I really do hope you have a wonderful day, and keep fighting, because you never know what new thing tomorrow will bring. Have a great week. Bye.